Okay, so we're going to talk about exponents. After this lesson, you should be able to know what it means for a number to be raised to a power and how to represent the repeated multiplication symbolically. Okay. That's our first example right here. And you should also know the reason for some bases requiring parentheses. That's also important. Okay, so let's go over the vocabulary very quickly of a number raised to a power. Whatever's here in the lower part of the power is called the base, and this number up here is the exponent, and that tells us how many times the base has been represented in repeated multiplication. So when it's in this form, it's called in exponential form. As opposed to, let's say that x to the fourth represents x times x times x times x. X represented in repeated multiplication 4 times. Okay, this right here is called expanded or standard. Sometimes it's called expanded form. Sometimes it's called standard form. So it's either called expanded form or standard form. Now, if we have something like this object right here, we say that this is 3 raised to the second power. Okay, and sometimes we call this whole thing a power. Sometimes you'll, if you actually evaluate, if you are able to evaluate, so if the base is an integer or if it's numerical, we can evaluate it. So 3 squared or 3 raised to the second power is 9. Sometimes 9 is referred to as a power. We say that 9 is a power of 3. So there's 2 different ways of using the word power. Now, powers with special names. So raising something to the second power, so the second power is often called squared. Okay, so we refer to this whole thing as x squared. Or we could also say x to the second power. The third power is often referred to as cubed. You may already know this already, but it's a good review to have in case you have forgotten it. Okay, so our task right now is to write these in expanded form. So I just want to make sure you understand what it means, what certain things look like. So 5 to the third power, or 5 cubed, would be 5 represented with repeated multiplication 3 times. Okay, my 5s are sort of messy here, but 5 times 5 times 5. If you have something like this, the difference between these two, let's say number 1 here and number 2 here, the difference between them is that right here only 4 is the base. Okay, whereas in number 2, the whole fraction 4/9 is the base. So this right here would be 4 times 4 times 4 over 9. Okay, and you could go ahead and say, well, 4 times 4 is 16, times 4 is 64. So this could be evaluated. It doesn't need to be. Our only purpose is to really show you what it looks like in exponential form and what it would translate to in expanded form. This right here would translate to 4 times 4 times 4 over 9 times 9 times 9. Okay? So, again, the difference is where you put the parentheses. The first one didn't have parentheses, so 3, the only base for the exponent 3 is the number 4. Whereas this one had parentheses, so the entire fraction is the base. Likewise, with this right here, this fraction, this is -2 times -2 times -2 times -2 over 11 times 11 times 11 times 11. It could also be written as -2 over 11 times -2 over 11, and so on, 4 times. Okay. This is a curious, so let's again look at the difference between the first example here and the second example. They look almost identical, so people often treat them identically, but that's a big mistake if you treat them identically. So this right here, it doesn't look like it, but right here the base is only 8. So I could rewrite this as negative 1 times 8 squared. Okay, and in this case we use PEMDAS to realize that we would square the 8 first, so this would be negative 1 times 64, which would be negative 64. Okay, so in this case, the result would be negative 64, whereas in this case the base is negative 8, so you do negative 8 times negative 8. Well, negative times negative is positive, so you get positive 64. So in this case, you'd get a positive 64. So it's very, very different. If there's no parentheses, like in our first example here, this example right here, then this ends up being a negative answer. Okay. Whereas if if the power is an even number, if there are parentheses, then that ends up being a positive number. Okay, make sure to take notes carefully, and make sure that if you have any questions, you write the questions down so we can discuss them during class tomorrow or on Monday. Okay, this right here refers to this, so a decimal can also be raised to a power. So what we would do, the base here is the whole number 3.8, or the entire number 3.8. So it would be 3.8 times 3.8 times 3.8 10 times. So this would be 3.8 multiplied by itself 10 times. Okay, you could also use a calculator to calculate this. Alright, so what I want you to think about for Monday's class is what values of n make this product positive and what values make it negative. Okay, so what can I replace here for n to make this whole product positive, and what values could I replace for n to make the whole thing negative? Okay, and that's the end of the lesson today.